Hello everyone, this is TJ here from Mac Advisor. Today I'm back with my first impressions for the iPhone 6 and I've got a few things that I want to talk about, so I'll go straight into it. So first off, I'm going to start with the design. Now I think most people will probably agree that it's a stunning design, certainly from the front anyway. I mean, this is the space grey model, so it's got the black front, so I think that looks to me to be the best model. Looking at it from the front anyway. A few little changes, like we've got the sleep wake button on the side, so I keep finding myself trying to press it on the top even though the phone is slightly taller than my iPhone 5S. So that is taking a bit of getting used to. So half the time I keep hitting the top and then half the time I will sort of remember that it's there depending on how I'm holding it and using the phone. I will sort of use the button on the side, so that's just one of those small things, because I've sort of been used over the last 6-7 years, so used to just automatically pressing it on the top without thinking about it. So that's just something that takes a bit of getting used to. We've got new controls on the side, so slightly different shape to what we've had in the past. But for all intents and purposes, everything else is pretty much standard. Now, where it becomes much more controversial is the design on the back. Now, I like the design for the most part on the back. I mean, this all metal. The only thing I don't like, and probably a lot of you will agree with me, is the antenna lines here that go all the way around the top and all the way around the bottom. Now, I didn't like this when it first came out in the leaks many months ago, and it's grown on me ever so slightly, but just a slight bit ever since it came out. I mean, I don't hate it as much as I used to, but I don't love it at the same time. It's probably one of those things that will take a while to grow on me. Probably take another 12 months, but eventually it might grow on me. But I would have preferred it if we could have just had the antenna lines going across the top, across the bottom, maybe a little bit thinner. I think there was a mock-up with a similar sort of design just before it came out. Rather than just sort of going all the way around. So that's sort of the major thing about the design that I don't like, and probably what a lot of other people will agree with me on. The other thing as well is the protruding camera lens. It's obviously something they've had to put on there because it's so thin that perhaps they couldn't fit the camera in. So that's just another slight issue. I mean, it would have been better if we could have had maybe a little bit of extra thickness so that you could fit the camera in. That would have been nice, but maybe that's something that they'll perhaps do on the next model, who knows. But that's just a couple of things on the design. Now next I'm going to look at the overall size of the phone. Now many of you know that I don't like sort of larger phones, so I was a bit hesitant about getting this, and I thought that perhaps it would be a lot bigger than I thought it would be. But when I unboxed it, it actually seemed smaller than I was sort of expecting. If I bring in my iPhone 5S here, I've took it out of the case, you can just see how much bigger it is, just ever so slightly wider and just a little bit taller. So it's not too big. I mean, it does feel ever so slightly larger when I'm holding it in my hand, but not to the extent where I think, this is too large. It's not something that I'm going to be able to cope with. And I've been able to work with it well in my pocket. Obviously, if I'm, moving around the house, I'll have it with me in my pocket. I went out to the supermarket yesterday, had it in my pocket. It wasn't really an issue. I did think that as soon as I get in the car and sit down, maybe I'll have an issue with some of my more slimmer fitting jeans on, but it wasn't really an issue. So far so good with that. Although the phone isn't that much bigger than the 5S in terms of its overall surface area, the screen is noticeably larger, and that's something that I've sort of been trying to get used to. It is noticeably larger upon first glance, and I've noticed with apps, I mean, if I just go into BBC News here, everything just appears slightly larger. It's kind of scaled up for the larger display. Now, this may not be an issue for people who perhaps like things to be displayed larger. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be that way going forward. I mean, if I go into Instagram, everything just appears that much larger. It's like it's sort of been scaled up slightly, and things just appear larger in comparison to something on my iPhone 5S. So I don't know whether that's just how it's going to be, or whether developers will tweak their apps. But certainly with the iPhone 6 Plus, maybe they'll tweak their apps to fit more onto the screen. Where it became most apparent for me was I went into the App Store. If I go onto this screen here, the main sort of screen in the App Store, I mean, I don't know whether you can tell on camera, but these icons are massive. If I bought in my iPhone 5S, they'd be a lot smaller. Now I know it's a larger display, but these are, a lot larger than I would have expected. So maybe the way I would prefer it would be if they could scale these icons down and just scale everything down slightly in the App Store so that you could actually see more on the screen. And that's how I would like it with other apps. Now, I haven't got the zoomed in view turned on the phone. I've just got the standard view, because otherwise you get sort of the icons appear larger on the home screen. But I just find that things are displaying, you know, that much larger on the screen when you're going into apps. So some developers may update that and tweak it for the larger display. Obviously only time will tell, but at the moment I'm just finding that things are displaying just that little bit larger. For some people that might not be an issue, because some people obviously want a larger phone because they have problems with their vision and that they want to see things that much larger. But I would prefer to see more on the screen and have it slightly smaller than have things, you know, sort of stretched up and displayed at that, you know, at that larger size. But that's just a personal preference. But for the most part, I've sort of been getting on fine with the larger display. As I say, it's just a bit weird transitioning from that smaller display to this larger one. And again, it's just something that's going to take a bit of getting used to. I mean, it is nice when you've got this curved edge sort of sliding backwards and forwards, like if I go onto a web page or something, if I go into the music app, and I can just sort of swipe backwards and forwards between different things. And it just feels nice to sort of swipe between things with the sort of curved edges on the display. That was one of the things that they pointed out in the keynote, and they said that when they put those gestures into iOS, you know, whenever it was last year or the year before, that was something that they were thinking about. You know, they were thinking ahead to this phone with those gestures. So it's nice to be able to swipe backwards and forwards between things. Now, one thing that I have found difficult is using the phone one-handed, because I can't reach all the way to the top. Usually I'll sort of hold the phone like this and I can only reach sort of 2/3 of the way up. But what you can do is if you double tap, not press, but just double tap on the home button, the display shrinks down and you can then reach anything that you need to. So if I go into a news story here, if I just double tap and I want to go back, I can just hit sections and it takes me back to the, you know, the list of news stories in this particular app. So that has come in useful. I mean, I used Clear. I don't know whether it's on my shopping list from the other day, but I was trying to swipe off things on my shopping list to say that I'd completed them. And I couldn't, because I was trying to use it one-handed, carrying a basket in the other. And then I suddenly thought, we've got reachability, and the only way I could do it was to use reachability to do that. So that feature has come in handy, and I have to keep remembering that it's there to use it. Otherwise, a lot of the time, it either means repositioning the phone in my hand so that I can, you know, sort of reach up to the top, or sort of using my second hand to use it. So I have to keep remembering that reachability is there. So it's nice that that's built in. Now, somebody asked a question in my unboxing video about the camera lens on the back. You know, how does it feel when the phone's lying down flat? Now, if you're tapping on the right hand side, it's not really an issue. If you're tapping on the lower half of the phone, so if you're, you know, typing and replying to a message, when you go into the top left, I don't know whether you can hear that, it does rock just ever so slightly if you're tapping in the top left. So maybe if you're tapping on a menu button to go back to something one-handed, you are going to have that. But I'm obviously using the phone without a case at the moment. So if you're planning on using your phone without a case at the moment, when you're putting it down on a flat surface, it is going to rock just ever so slightly if you're pressing in, you know, sort of this top left-hand quarter of the screen. But for the rest of it, it seems to be fine. But as I say, if you've got a case on, it's not really an issue. Is there anything else? Oh, speed I wanted to talk about. This has obviously got the A8 chip in it, which has sort of got marginal improvements over the A7, and I didn't think I would notice an increase in speed, but I've sort of noticed, you know, sort of over my 5S, I didn't think there would be much of an increase in speed, but it seems to be a lot faster. I mean, just sort of going into apps, it seems a lot faster, and if I turn the display off and I go to unlock it, it just seems to, that animation just seems a lot smoother and a lot faster. And if you sort of pull down and bring up this keyboard, you used to get a fraction of a second of lag there on the iPhone 5S. I think I get it on my iPad as well. But just pulling that keyboard down, usually it seemed to work after the first time, it seemed to work fine. But just pulling it down for the first time, it just pops right up. So I didn't really get the feeling that it was, you know, sort of on par with the A7, or some people have said, you know, you're not really going to notice a difference, but I've sort of noticed a difference in speed just doing general things. and things like the faster Wi-Fi. I haven't got an 802.11ac router at all, but I have noticed that Wi-Fi browsing in general has been faster. Obviously the chip in there is faster and it's got an extended range and so on. And I downloaded, I think BBC News was one of the first apps I downloaded. I went into the App Store and went into my purchased apps and, you know, downloaded a bunch of apps when I sort of was setting the phone up, and everything just seemed to download pretty quick, a lot faster than on my 5S, put it that way. So whether that was just a one-off or whether it's something to do with the improved Wi-Fi in the phone, I don't know. Now graphics I've tested out on Asphalt 8. Many of you know that I like this game. I had this on my 5S. I need to put some other games on here, but I've tested out Asphalt 8 because Asphalt 8 was updated a couple of days ago to take advantage of the you know, metal, which was debuted at WWDC, and what that will do is you know, it just gives better graphics performance on the A7 and the A8 chip. So I assumed that you know, you would see a noticeable increase in the graphics performance. Now I haven't with this. It just seems about the same as the 5S to me. Whether it's just this particular game and whether it needs updating again for the A8 chip, because obviously it would have been updated for the A7. I don't know. So obviously I either need to pay closer attention to the game, or there's some other games that I'm going to try, see if I can get some of the metal optimized ones. But for me, the graphics just seem to be about the same. Obviously, you know, speed wise and everything, it seemed same as the 5S. The way that the graphics looked seemed about the same as the 5S, so I'm not so sure on that. I need to do some more tests, but that's kind of it overall. There isn't really anything else that I can sort of comment on at this early stage. I need to I haven't really tested it. I took a couple of shots with the camera. We're not sort of done any proper tests, and I just need to look at some of the other things. But those are some of my initial impressions. Battery life at the moment, I charged this yesterday morning, about 8 or 9 o'clock yesterday morning, and I'm on 39% at the moment, so I suspect it's going to be sort of either on par or just slightly better than my 5S. I mean, my 5S I could probably get a couple of days out of, so I guess this is probably going to be about the same. Obviously if you go with something like the 6 Plus, you are going to get better battery life. But that's it for now, I think. Those are some of my first initial impressions after using the phone. Obviously I will do a review of the phone after about a week of use, so that gives me plenty of time to test out the features and so on. But if you've got any questions, then submit those below. I might do a question and answer session on the iPhone 6 because lots of people have got lots of different questions on it. So if I get a ton of questions, maybe I'll just do a separate video answering those questions, or I might just reply on the comments. We'll see. If you've got any other videos you want to see on this, then let me know. I'm hopefully going to do a comparison with the 5S at some point, but if there's any other sort of videos that you want to see, then put those in the comments below and I'll check those out. But that's it for now. Let me know how you're getting on with your iPhone 6 or even 6 Plus if you've bought one of those. It'd be nice to hear your feedback on what you think, whether you agree with some of my initial impressions. But that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.